In his only interview since the record was shattered and then today adjusted even higher, we're joined by Rich Gelfond, CEO of IMAX. Rich, I mean, Friday, the whisper number in Hollywood and Wall Street was around, what, 135 to 145 million? Today's new number sailed over yesterday's initial tally. Tell me what you thought when you saw the first print of 156 million.
Well, Liz, I actually think of the box office as global, much more than domestic.
Sure.
Because remember, on typical movies, domestic is only 1/3 of the worldwide box office. So anyway, your number is impressive, but the global number is close to 300 million now. And the whisper number globally was 180 as of last Thursday. And, you know, I did my own math. This is art, not science. And I knew it would sell past 200, but I'm just shocked that it's up around 300. This movie has a life of its own. I think because it's a different demographic than a lot of the movies that fly at these levels unintended. I think people didn't know how to analyze it. I don't think anybody predicted 300.
Yeah, so nobody predicted 300 million, and you are an expert at this. You've been running IMAX a long time, and you know, you may say it's art versus science, but you've got it down in many cases to a science. Let's talk about that demographic. So a huge portion, more than half of the moviegoers were over, let's say, a certain age, you know, more of the boomer crowd, because they remember the first one. But that really holds more heft, considering many of those people were less inclined to show up to the movie theater because of COVID fears, right?
Well, I think that was part of the math problem, Liz, is that everybody, or that the experts thought that those people who remembered the first one and had nostalgia for it would come back, and a lot of them did come back. But I think one of the more shocking things is how many of the young people came, how many of the 18 to 30-year-olds came. And I think the analysts missed one big thing. They were saying, well, there was Star Wars 1 and Star Wars 2, or, you know, whatever movie, a 1 and 2. But this was a 37-year gap. So a lot of the people weren't born when the last one came out. And then I think the other thing that was unusual this time is this had a 97% Rotten Tomatoes score, 99% right. Consumer score. So people forgot it wasn't just a regular sequel. It was a sequel that spanned beyond the lifetime of a lot of these people, and that it was a great movie, which I don't think anyone really understood how deep that went.
I do. I thought the script was great. I was expecting a little bit of cliche action. It wasn't. They didn't play on, you know, maudlin emotions or anything like that. So when you pair that with great movie making, which leads me to the question of the IMAX cameras. I mean, when you look at exactly what Joseph Kosinski, the director, did, mounting IMAX cameras, the Rialto system, right, where you could separate the lens, mount it in the cockpit, and put the recorder, kind of stuff it, I don't know where it was, by the actors' feet, so that the actors could actually be in there during these scenes of you know, the fights in the sky. I mean, I look at that and I really wonder that the real dogfight picture, that's what we're seeing. Give us a sense of what it took to develop the system for use in Maverick, Rich.
And I want to give Tom Cruise a lot of the credit. He's been an IMAX fan for 20 years, and you must remember the iconic scenes in one of the Mission Impossibles when he was climbing the Burj Khalifa, and it was captured with IMAX cameras on the 120th floor. I mean, it blew my mind. And Tom said he wanted to develop a camera that would really give you the feeling of being inside that cockpit. And he was the driving force, and our engineers and Joe Kosinski and everyone worked at creating this special technology, because as you know, everything in Tom's life is what's the next generation. So what stunt can be better than any stunt being done before? What visual could be better than any visual? What sound? I just actually sent him a text, and I said there'll never be another Tom Cruise, because the guy's passion, his work ethic, and his drive for perfection are just unparalleled.
Well, his power is almost unparalleled. Not only did he demand that, and you guys were able to develop this system, he also promised To people who said, would this be, released simultaneously to streaming? He said that will not happen. I mean, what kind of star power is that where he can basically deem, no, this is going to be an exclusive theatrical release? That, of course, made a huge difference, I'm sure, for box office, that it wasn't, simultaneously put out on Paramount Plus or what have you. Do other actors look at that and say, I want to be like Tom Cruise? And will movie companies listen to them when they say, I do not want this to be simultaneously
Well,
released
there's
on
a
streaming?
select group of actors, directors who have that kind of power. And I'm almost positive that Tom put in his contract when he first made the movie, that was the way it was going to be released. And certainly, since some of the streamers tried to mix it up and go day on day online, there are directors and there are actors who have put that in their contracts. And, soon after the whole Paramount Plus of it was announced, Tom called me and said, rest assured, this is not going there. This is staying theatrical. And he was careful and he was smart and he has the leverage to do that. And he delivered the goods. I mean, we did 14% of the North American box office, even for a big movie. 10 is a good number because Tom knew exactly the story he wanted to tell, and he knew how he wanted to tell it. And internationally, did about 8.5%, which again, even for the big Marvel movies, it's around 7. So Tom knew how he wanted to shoot it, how he wanted to show it, and did it, and audiences responded.
They sure did, and I loved it. I tried to see it a second time, Rich, but everything was sold out. I did. I tried.
Well, Liz, you have connections. We may be able to sneak in the front row.
I'll perch at the back. I need buttered popcorn, though. They can't run out of the butter. Rich, congratulations.
I'm not sure we can deliver that.
That's harder than actually getting a ticket. Rich, congratulations to you and the team at IMAX and to Tom Cruise.